Obedience to God. It is a word we hear often, but do we truly know what it really means? Jesus said in John 14:15, "If you love me, keep my commandments." But in a world full of distractions, temptation, and personal desires, how do we truly walk in obedience to God? Are we obeying only when it is convenient, or are we fully surrendered to His will? In this video, we'll dive deep into what true obedience looks like, why it matters, and how it can transform your relationship with God. We'll explore powerful scriptures, real-life examples, and practical steps to help you live a life that pleases Him. Genesis chapter 22, verse 2 tells the story of Abraham and Isaac. God asked Abraham to sacrifice his son. Imagine the turmoil in Abraham's heart. This was his son, his only son, whom he loved dearly. Yet Abraham chose to obey. He trusted God even when it didn't make sense. This story teaches us about true obedience. It's about faith. It's about surrendering to God's will, even when we don't understand. Abraham's obedience was tested, and he emerged stronger, his faith refined like gold. Obedience is a journey of faith. It's a step into the unknown, hand in hand with God. We may not always see the path, but we know the guide. And that makes all the difference. Like Abraham, we are called to a life of obedience. It won't always be easy, but it will always be worth it. The blessings that flow from obedience are immeasurable. God doesn't always give us a detailed map. He doesn't always reveal every twist and turn, but He does promise to be with us every step of the way. Obedience is trusting in His presence and His guidance, even when we can't see the destination. Think of it like walking through a thick fog. You may not see the path clearly, but you can feel the ground beneath your feet. You can sense the direction you need to go. That's what obedience is like, trusting the unseen, knowing that God is leading you. It takes courage to obey when we don't have all the answers, but that's where faith comes in. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen, as it says in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. When we choose obedience, we choose to trust God's heart even more than we trust our own understanding. And in that trust, we find peace and strength for the journey. This teaching goes against our natural instincts. It's about choosing love over retaliation, forgiveness over anger. Resisting evil doesn't mean being passive in the face of injustice. It means responding with grace and strength that comes from God. It means breaking the cycle of hate with love. When we turn the other cheek, we reflect the heart of Christ. We show the world a different way, a better way. It's not easy, but it's the path of obedience. Obedience to this teaching leads to inner peace and ultimately transforms hearts, including our own. It's a testament to the power of God's love working through us. Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character, as it says in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33. The people we surround ourselves with have a profound impact on our lives. They can influence our thoughts, our actions, and ultimately our destiny. Choosing good company means surrounding ourselves with people who uplift us, encourage us, and challenge us to grow in our faith. It means seeking out relationships that draw us closer to God. On the other hand, bad company can lead us astray. It can tempt us to compromise our values and turn away from God's path. It's crucial to be discerning about the company we keep. Obedience in this area means being willing to walk away from relationships that harm our souls, even if it's difficult. It means prioritizing our spiritual well-being above all else. Pray without ceasing. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 17. Prayer is our lifeline to God. It's a constant conversation with our Creator, a way to share our hearts, our fears, our hopes, and our dreams. Through prayer, we invite God into every aspect of our lives. We acknowledge our need for Him and seek His guidance in all that we do. Prayer is not just a religious duty. It's a vital part of a vibrant relationship with God. Perseverance in prayer is essential. There may be times when we feel like our prayers are hitting a ceiling, but we must never give up. God hears every word, every sigh, every tear. Obedience in prayer means making it a priority, not just when we need something, but as a constant rhythm of our lives. It's in the quiet moments of communion with God that we find strength, direction, and peace. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Philippians chapter 4, verse 6. Fear can be paralyzing. It can keep us from stepping into the fullness of what God has for us. But God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. That's from 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. Obedience requires courage. Courage to face our fears, courage to step out in faith, courage to trust God even when we don't understand. When fear knocks on the door of our hearts, we can answer with faith. We can choose to focus on God's promises instead of our anxieties. We can choose to dwell on His faithfulness instead of our circumstances. And when we do, we'll find that His perfect love casts out all fear. 1 John chapter 4, verse 18. Isaiah 45 reminds us that God's ways are higher than our ways, His thoughts higher than our thoughts. The world offers us many paths, but not all paths lead to life. It takes a discerning heart to choose the right way. Discernment is the ability to distinguish between truth and error, between good and evil, between God's voice and the world's distractions. It's a crucial element of obedience. We cultivate discernment through prayer, through studying God's word, and through seeking wise counsel. As we grow in our relationship with God, our spiritual senses become more attuned to His voice. Obedience requires us to be discerning, to test everything against the truth of God's word, and to follow the path that leads to life, even when it's narrow and challenging. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. That's James chapter 1, verse 2. Life is full of challenges. There will be times of testing, times of doubt, times of pain. But even in the midst of difficulties, we can find joy. Obedience doesn't exempt us from trials, but it gives us the strength to endure them. It reminds us that God is with us in the fire, that He will never leave us or forsake us. When we choose obedience, we choose to trust God's heart even when our circumstances are difficult. We choose to believe that He is working all things together for our good. Romans 8, verse 28. This perspective allows us to find joy even in the midst of trials. Not joy in the circumstances themselves, but joy in the God who sustains us through them. There is a way that appears to be right, but in the end, it leads to death. Proverbs 14, verse 12. Disobedience always comes with a cost. It may seem appealing in the moment, but it ultimately leads to pain, brokenness, and separation from God. When we choose our own way over God's way, we choose to live outside of His blessing and protection. We become vulnerable to the enemy's schemes and the consequences of our own choices. The good news is that God is always ready to forgive and restore. If we've strayed from His path, we can always turn back to Him. He is a God of second chances, a God of grace and mercy. Obedience is not about earning God's love, it's about living in the fullness of the love He already offers. It's about choosing life, choosing blessing, choosing to walk in His ways and experience the abundant life He has for us. So, take a moment today to reflect on your path. Choose to align your steps with His. Embrace His grace and let His love guide you to a life of true fulfillment.